Welcome to Hunted and Haunted Evidence and Echoes. This is Preston Castle, an institution that never let go. Content warning. This episode contains discussion of child abuse, institutional violence, neglect, and death involving minors. Listener discretion is strongly advised. They called it a reform school, a place meant to save boys who had gone astray. A place where discipline would replace delinquency, where structure would rebuild broken futures. But what waited behind the gates wasn't rehabilitation. It was control. Locked doors, solitary rooms, punishments designed to break, not teach. Silence enforced through fear. And long after the school closed, some say the boys never truly left. Welcome to Hunted and Haunted Evidence and Echoes. I'm Corey. On this show, Hunted examines crimes committed by people, Haunted explores the places left behind, and then we have the middle, where history lingers and the past refuses to say something. Tonight we're standing before a place built to correct children, and remembered for how many it failed. This is Preston Castle. Preston Castle stands on a hill overlooking the town of Ione in California. Completed in 1894, it was originally known as the Preston School of Industry, a state-run reform school for boys during the height of America's reform movement. The late 1800s were filled with optimism about discipline. The belief was simple. Structure builds character, industry corrects delinquency, authority restores order. But that belief often blurred into something harsher. If you were poor, if you skipped school, if you stole food, if your parents couldn't manage you, you could be sent away. Some boys were barely 12. The building was constructed in Romanesque revival style. Grand arches, thick stone walls, towers overlooking dry California hills. From the outside, it looked almost dignified. Almost noble. Inside, life was rigid and unforgiving. Iron-barred doors, isolation rooms, basement workspaces that doubled as punishment areas, silence enforced by consequences. Former inmates later described beatings, solitary confinement, forced labour, and food deprivation. Discipline wasn't corrective, it was absolute. And when discipline becomes absolute, it becomes abuse. Imagine being 13, not violent, not hardened, just poor. Your mother signs a form because she can't feed you, or a judge decides you need structure. Your name is written into a ledger, your belongings are taken, and you are assigned a number. You wake before dawn, you march in line, you work, you obey. And if you don't, you disappear into a room no one discusses. Preston wasn't unique. Reform schools across the country operated under similar philosophies. Fear was considered formative, but fear doesn't build character. It builds silence. In 1950, 16-year-old William Billy Gonsalves died after being brutally beaten by staff members. This wasn't minor discipline gone too far. It was sustained violence. Reports revealed he had been struck repeatedly. The injuries were severe enough that they could not be quietly explained away. Charges were filed against employees.
Generate by AI.
Billy's death forced public scrutiny on Preston. But here's what lingers. Billy's story surfaced because it couldn't be hidden. Which raises the uncomfortable question: how many didn't? Preston Castle closed in 1960. Officially, it was restructuring, modernization. But institutions rarely close when they are thriving. They close when failure becomes undeniable. Approaching Preston, the towers cast long shadows across the valley. The stone is pale but weathered. The windows stare outward like hollow eyes. Inside, sound behaves strangely, footsteps echo longer than they should, and the air shifts from corridor to corridor. The staircases are steep, iron railings, cool to the touch even in summer. The basement feels compressed, ceilings lower, light absorbed instead of reflected. It doesn't feel theatrical. It feels residual. Today, Preston Castle is widely regarded as one of Northern California's most haunted locations. Visitors report disembodied footsteps, children's voices whispering, doors closing without airflow, equipment malfunctioning during investigations, cold spots concentrated in the infirmary and isolation rooms. But the most common experience isn't visual. It's emotional. A sudden heaviness, a pressure shift, a sense of being watched. Skeptics point to acoustics, temperature gradients, suggestion. And they're not wrong to question. But trauma does leave an imprint. And Preston holds trauma. Personal experience. The building creaked as I walked around, rhythmically, not randomly. Outside, sunlight was blinding. Inside, the air felt heavy, stagnant, unmovable. Except for one room. The infirmary. I stepped inside and felt it immediately. It was cold. Not gradual, not a draft. Sudden, focused, cold. Like someone had exhaled directly against my neck. No fans, no open windows, no explanation that made sense in the moment. The air thickened the longer I stood there. In a corner, a cot angled toward the wall. A green chair slightly turned. It didn't look abandoned. It looked paused. I backed out slowly, and the cold stopped at the doorway. It didn't follow. It remained in the infirmary. Anna Corbin. In 1950, the same year Billy Gonsalves died, another death occurred at Preston.
Generate by AI.
Anna Corbin was the head housekeeper. She wasn't an inmate. She wasn't medical staff. She was responsible for maintaining the building, cleaning corridors, managing linens, overseeing domestic operations. She knew Preston intimately. She knew its stairwells, its routines, its creaks, its blind spots. Anna was found dead at the bottom of a staircase in the infirmary building. The official ruling was accidental, a fall. The case was closed quickly. But the timing raised questions. Same year, same building, same culture of silence. There's no documented proof of foul play. But a head housekeeper sees everything. She moves through every room. She hears things. She notices what others miss. And institutions that rely on silence rarely welcome witnesses. When I stood in the infirmary, feeling that sudden cold, I didn't feel threatened. I felt observed, watched. Not aggressively. Almost carefully. And I couldn't shake the thought. If Anna remains, maybe she isn't restless. Maybe she stayed because she knew what happened there. Maybe she didn't leave because someone needed to remember. Visitors report sightings of a woman in white near the infirmary. Footsteps that stop when you turn, cold spots concentrated near stairwells. Some say she's a caretaker. Others believe she's a witness who never left her post. And while preparing this episode, I realized something. Today is February 23rd, and it marks the anniversary of Anna Corbin's death at Preston Castle. We don't tell these stories for spectacle. We tell them because real people lived here, real people suffered here, and real people deserve to be remembered by name. So tonight, we remember Anna. Anna Corbin was brutally murdered in the supply storage area in the basement of the administration building at Preston School of Industry. Eugene Monroe, who was the main suspect of the murder, was tried 3 times and acquitted in the last trial. Officially, her murder was never solved. Preston Castle isn't haunted because something evil lived there. It's haunted because suffering did. Because children were punished instead of protected. Because poverty was criminalized. Because silence was easier than reform. If spirits remain here, they aren't monsters. They're witnesses. We remember the ghost stories. We debate the cold spots. We talk about the woman in white, but how many of us remember the boys' names? Hauntings are easy to remember and sensationalize. History is harder to confront. Places don't become haunted by accident. They become haunted when harm is repeated over and over again, when suffering is normalized, when silence replaces accountability. Preston Castle wasn't haunted because something followed people home. It was haunted because too many children were never protected. Because truth was buried alongside trauma. Witnesses were ignored or lost. What lingers here isn't rage. It's memory and sadness. And memory doesn't disappear just because a building closes its doors. If you walk through places like this, walk carefully. Not because something might reach out, but because something deserves to be remembered. And tonight we remember Anna Corbin, head housekeeper, witness, victim. We remember William Billy Gonsalves, 16 years old. And we remember the boys whose name history did not preserve. Not as ghost stories, not as legends, but as people. This show isn't about the spectacle, it's about the evidence and the echoes. And sometimes the most important thing we can do is say a name out loud. I'm Corey, and this has been Hunted and Haunted, Evidence and Echoes.